Welcome back to Lux Unfiltered, where we get real about self-awareness, healing, and all the messy bits in between. If this is your first time here, hi, I'm Lux, and this podcast is basically a long, unhinged voice note to a friend, except instead of venting, I'm actually just unpacking things that make me feel a bit better. So, today's episode might sting a little bit. So if you were looking for a soft, comforting chat, you might want to queue up an older episode because this ain't it. Today, we're talking about patterns. I know. Specifically, why the same frustrating, painful, disappointing things keep happening in our lives. And listen, I say this with so much love. If there's a pattern, it's rarely external. It's you. But before you throw your phone across the room, let's dig into why that is, and more importantly, how you can change it. Have you ever sat somewhere and thought, why does the same type of people keep hurting me? Why do I always end up in jobs where I'm undervalued? Why do I feel like I'm reliving the same story with different characters? And that's not the universe being cruel, babe. That's you. Or more accurately, your unhealed trauma, your nervous system, and your subconscious patterns leading you back to what feels familiar. And I know that sounds like victim blaming, but it's not, because it isn't about blame. It's about recognition. If you recognize a pattern, you can break it. But here's the kicker. Breaking the pattern means choosing discomfort. I know, I'm sorry. So let's get a little bit nerdy about this. Our nervous systems, especially when we're shaped by trauma, craves familiarity, not safety, familiarity. If you grew up in an environment where love was inconsistent, where you had to work hard for attention, or where you felt like your needs weren't important, guess what? Your subconscious is going to seek out relationships, jobs, and situations that recreate that feeling. Not because it's good for you, but because it's what you know. Your brain is essentially saying the chaos, the emotional instability, the need to prove myself. Wow, we've seen this before. We know how to survive it. It doesn't mean that you want to or that you should have to. So when something stable comes along, when you meet some kind of communicative, wonderful person, or you get a job that respects your boundaries, you don't trust it. It feels boring. It feels off because your nervous system doesn't recognize safety. It recognizes patterns. So let's make it personal. I've been in these cycles, I swore, that weren't my fault. Relationships where I was the fixer, friendships where I was the emotional dumping ground, work situations where I overgave and then I burnt out. And for a long time, I really believed that I just had shitty luck. But the common denominator in that? Me. I was the one picking these dynamics. I was the one ignoring the red flags. I was the one stepping into this role that felt like home when home wasn't safe. And breaking that cycle, it required me to stop seeing myself as a victim of circumstance and start seeing myself as an active participant. And that's not easy because it means taking accountability. But here's the thing about accountability. It's not self-blame, it's self-liberation. If you're listening to this thinking, okay, Lux, I get it, but how do I actually stop? Here's how you start. 1, audit your patterns. Grab a notebook and write down the recurring themes in your life, in your relationships, in your friendships, work, even if in your self-talk. What keeps happening? And then ask yourself, what do all of these situations have in common? And then 2, you name your role. This part is uncomfortable, but sit with it. What role do you play in these situations? Are you always the one chasing? Are you always the one fixing? Are you always the one over-giving? If you find yourself saying, I had no choice, pause, you did. The choice might not have been obvious though, but it was there. Get comfortable with your discomfort. Breaking a pattern means choosing what feels natural at first, saying no when you'd rather say yes, or walking away when you'd normally overstay. You have to remind yourself that just because it's familiar doesn't mean that it's safe. Learn to regulate your nervous system. When you're used to chaos, stability is scary. So you have to train your body to feel safe in calm environments. Breath work, grounding exercises, therapy, even just sitting in stillness, all of these will help rewire your brain to accept that it's not being rejected. You're not the fixer, the savior, or the one who has to suffer to get love. You don't have to prove your worth. And start catching yourself in these old thoughts. Do you actually want this? Or are you just used to it? The good news, though, is the pattern is you. So the solution is also you. You're not stuck. You're not doomed to repeat the cycles forever. Once you see the pattern, you can break it. And once you break it, you start building new things. And I won't lie to you, it's slow fucking work. You might catch yourself slipping into old habits, but every time you choose differently, every time you step out of the familiar and into something healthier, you're proving to yourself that you are no longer the person who accepts less than they deserve. And that's the real work of healing. Not just understanding what happened to you, but choosing not to recreate it. All right, that's where I'll leave you today. We got a bit heated. If this episode resonated though, let me know. DM me, share it, send it to a friend who keeps complaining about that same old ex. You know the one. Okay, as always, I love you. Bye.